Hi everyone, welcome back, and I will be hosting this section. It's really a cool section that involves everything you should know about brand awareness, how to get your audience, how to make your brand famous and renowned among your target audience. And our first speaker is a great person. Is a founder of a famous international SEO agency, Verve Search. It's Lisa Myers. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. I hope you're doing well, and we are waiting your very intriguing report that calls big ideas that deserve links. So please share with us what ideas actually do you think deserve links, and how people can get those links. Yeah.
What are your secrets? Please tell us.
Okay. So I'm just going to try to get this slideshow started, which
yes, please.
Is a little bit of a challenge when it comes to, there we go. Is this working?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Can you see it in full view now?
Yes, it's in full view, so you can start.
Okay, great. So I'm going to be talking about big ideas that deserves links. So we, so I run a SEO agency that are probably most known for the way that we do outreach and link development. And so to start off with, I just want to go through a little bit of context to this and why we are doing the things that we do the way that we do it. So I think that the big problem with traditional content marketing in terms of actually using content itself, so written content, in order to generate links or getting coverage is not really that valuable anymore. The reason for that is that it's so much of it. It is so much of this kind of content that journalists and website owners are just completely engulfed in too much of this. So basically what have kind of happened is that we've writing this kind of content or creating low quality assets to get maybe one link. Now, in order to generate enough links to increase rankings, we need a lot more than one link. We need loads of links, and ideally we need loads of links that are of high quality. So in 2012, we started doing kind of content marketing very much on a bigger scale, but in the traditional form, more like writing article, blogger outreach, smaller kind of infographic stuff. But the value of what we were able to contribute in terms of authority from these links reduced over the years coming. So by end of 2014, the quality of what we're able to get to the clients wasn't enough in terms of being able to increase rankings fast enough to then get return on investment. So we changed our strategy completely in January 2015. I even closed down what was then the content team, and we decided we needed to go big, and we needed to go big or not do it at all. And since then, the increase in the quality and the authority of those links that we've been able to get has considerably increased. Basically, what we believe that you need to be doing is that you need to be creating content and ideas that sticks out. So this is from a English addict exec called Dave Trott. If everyone is drawing a cross, you need to be drawing a circle. So it's not necessarily saying that infographics don't work. It is saying infographics don't work if everyone else is doing infographics. And writing content or doing loads of surveys doesn't work if everyone else is doing that, in whatever kind of vertical that you work in. To be able to generate increase in rankings, you basically need to be able to do stuff that not everyone else is doing. Sounds very logical. So what we would like you to think of, to get the industry to think of is thinking a bit more like 50s ad execs and executing like geeks. That is what the future of link development is. So that's where I have the whole ideas and concept that deserves more than just links. This is very important because if you concentrate on creating ideas and visual assets or even written assets that deserves more than just the link, then you are, one, creating a safe and sustainable link development strategy, but you are also creating very likely high authority that also gets more links because it spreads. So let me give an example of this that we have done for one of our clients. So Expedia UK, pardon me, last year, we created a very, very simple kind of visual campaign playing on creating old school travel posters, including animals that were already extinct. So basically creating these travel posters showing off animals like they were still alive. So this, we really wanted to have a artists that were really passionate about creating a specific style. And we outsourced this. We didn't actually create posters, they were digital posters. And so this is Mauritius, Meet the Dodo, our friend residents in the Moa, New Zealand. Now these very simple posters got some incredible coverage, including over 91 linking root domains so far from some of the most authoritative websites out there, including The Guardian, Washington Post, BBC, and so on. And a lot of sites that the client previously hadn't had as well. Also, very relevantly, he also got loads of social shares. And this is what I'm talking about. Creating campaigns, although this doesn't increase rankings as such, it does increase the reach of a campaign and the authority of the campaign, the authenticness of a campaign. So this got shares from The Guardian, BBC Travel, Huffington Post, and Washington Post as well. And this campaign also got print coverage. Now, this is the Observer Sunday, which is one of the biggest Sunday newspapers in the UK. And this was covered in the Sunday newspaper. And when an SEO campaign is good enough to get coverage in the newspaper, you know that there is no way that this is going to be deemed bad or dodgy from Google's point of view. This campaign even got turned into a fan-made mod for the Sims game, which I think is one of the most brilliant coverage from there. So basically, they created a modification in The Sims where you can include these posters in what language, I am not sure. And people started calling our office wanting to buy these posters, which is, again, quite exceptional for a campaign that is about generating links. And lastly, and I think most amazingly, it also generated a petition online where people signed this petition to thank the managing director of Expedia in the UK for commissioning this work. When does an actual marketing campaign get a petition for thanking someone? That is really rare, but it's all focused about doing something that's good. We are not trying to sell hotels like in PR or in advertising. What we're doing is that we're creating campaigns that are very much something that people would like to see and that has some good about it and getting some other coverage than just the links. Another campaign I quickly want to show you is a campaign we did for a company called Go Compare here in the UK. Now this campaign is an example of using data, which is I also think is extremely useful in terms of doing link development or outreach campaigns. So this campaign, we found a lot of really amazing data online about a very odd thing, which is the amount of deaths on screen in big Hollywood movies. And we created basically like a league table of who had the most on-screen deaths. It sounds very macabre, and in a way it is. And it's very simple using data that is already accessible. The surprising thing with this was that the winner won by quite a margin. Family movie, by all accounts. This campaign got an amazing amount of pickup from the get-go, although it was not particularly big in terms of creative output. The Guardian in the UK posted it, one of the first to post it, and he had an incredible amount of shares for them, as well as 159 comments. Because anyone that's listening to this now will probably be thinking, hang on, there were more deaths in Star Wars when they blew up a planet. But this was very specifically on-screen death. And by having something that were likely to invoke an emotional reaction in someone, you're more likely to get more shares and get it spread further. So actually within 12 hours of that work going up on The Guardian, James Gunn, who is the Hollywood director of the Guardian of the Galaxy, shared it on Twitter. Not only did he share on Twitter, but he spent 2 hours tweeting about the campaign, insisting that, no, they are correct. No, they are correct. This is actually the one with the most on-screen deaths, etc., etc. Again, creating a campaign that actually get this kind of buy-in from people around has huge impact on how far it can go. So this got an incredible 600 pieces of coverage from some amazing, huge sites. Again, it's not rocket science. It's not a campaign that is so expensive or anything. It is just being clever with data or creating something that is useful and appeal to people. It actually became a Twitter moment as well, which we haven't been able to replicate afterwards, but which is quite an amazing thing on its own, although we didn't do this with the objective of social. The point is that you have to consistently generate authority links throughout the year in order to be able to increase rankings for search engine results. And today, in 2017, you can't do that by blogger outreach or by creating articles and guest blogging or anything like that. You have to invest in creative ideas and create assets, whatever they might be, whether they're data, whether they're simple images. You can get this kind of coverage. Anyone can get these kind of coverage, but you have to invest the time. And I think now is the time for people to change the view and stop doing the same stuff that they always did. That is it. I think I managed to go within 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much for your wonderful report. I really liked your posters. It's good, really exciting ideas. So we are getting back to our speakers, and now we're waiting for Rhea. And Rhea, can you hear us? Yeah, hi Rhea. Our second speaker in this section is Rhea Drysdale, is a Chief Executive Officer of Outspoken Media, a great digital marketing and agency that provides SEO consulting, medium, reputation marketing and outreach. So about reputation marketing, exactly. Rhea will be speaking now. Yes, Rhea.
Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and screen share.
Let's start your conversation. Let's see your slides.
All right.
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect. Hi guys, I'm Rhea and excited to be here. So what we're going to talk about is reputation marketing, and it's really a new field, and so I'm pretty excited about it, and I've been trying to tell everyone about it for months now, because what a lot of people know Outspoken Media as is an SEO shop and also reputation management. But I will admit that after almost a decade of doing reputation management and SEO work, my brain started to get a little bit frustrated, because there's only so much that we can do as SEOs and only so much success that we can have unless we're able to create something truly exceptional like Lisa just talked about. And in many cases, organizations are limited in their capacity to do that, or the brand doesn't really fit with the campaign. And if there's a reputation issue, that can really negatively impact the performance of outreach and link building in particular. So we were really struggling, and what we found is that a lot of our clients really just wanted to kind of push negative reputation concern under the rug and kind of forget it and just move on. But what we started to identify is that there's a whole other space, and the other space is the flip side of reputation management, and that is reputation marketing. My belief is that when you have a truly exceptional reputation as a brand, that is what many of us know as brand equity, but really it goes beyond that. And so reputation marketing, to me, is what happens when all of the stars align and your reputation is so outstanding that everyone wants to talk about you, share who you are, what you do. If you have employees, they're so excited to bring new folks into the company, or talk about the great benefits that you have. Shareholders are happy if your finances are performing. So let's go ahead and kind of get into some of the process that I go through with the reputation audit steps and how I think about it. So what is reputation? If we just think in a really broad context, reputation is the expectation of future behavior based on a past experience. That's really important because a lot of brands can be recognized, right? We can have an impression of a brand, but it doesn't mean that we understand the reputation of the brand unless we have had a direct experience that was either met in terms of expectation, or perhaps there was a failure in expectation, or we know someone that had an experience. So reputation implies that something experiential has happened. And I think that that's really key. And we can talk about customer experience all day, but the issue with customer experience is that's also limiting because it doesn't take into account all the other constituencies that you might have, whether that's your community, the media, your employees, your shareholders, etc. So fundamentally, reputation is an expectation. Reputation marketing is not reviews management. I know that this is what Wikipedia says, and I want to make sure that we update that at some point. So the more that we gather in terms of materials and the more presentations and talks that we give, I'm sure that that'll start to become clearer. But the way that it's written on Wikipedia right now is that reputation marketing is basically going onto Yelp and positively managing your reviews and responding to people. That is so small in terms of a tactic that does not begin to scratch the surface of this. That's like saying that content strategy is writing a blog post. That's one tactic, but it's definitely not the total sum of it. So we were trying to come up with what is the definition and what should we say. I believe that reputation marketing is the action or the business of cultivating and promoting a positive reputation. That is strategically and actively working to improve your reputation across all of these different groups, across all of the different touch points of your business. And that really starts to add up. So if we look at how to chart your reputation, a lot of us function down here. And this is in the reputation management space, where basically we are meeting shareholder expectations, or perhaps we're failing shareholder expectations, or stakeholder, sorry. And then up above, we get into the exceeding space. And again, this is where most people tend to think about reputation management and how to fix something, or we're just kind of existing. And then we throw a lot of dollars into marketing or SEO, content creation, link building, social influencer marketing, trying to force something that could come very naturally if instead we focused on our reputation and just improving who we are and what we do. When we have reputation management issues, because we're not meeting the expectations of our constituency groups, we see a loss of profit. We have a team that is less educated in terms of your employees. If you're in an agency, you might have folks that aren't trained well, processes that are lacking, etc. These are things that we've struggled with at times. And we've started to identify that when you invest in your team, when you train them, when you give them process, when you give them great benefits, everything starts to improve, because what you end up with is more time. And time gives you the space to innovate. It gives you a loyal customer base so that you're not always trying to chase new ones. It gives you engaged employees with less turnover. It gives you savings and the ability to reinvest, expand, grow, etc. So everything gets better when you have a great reputation. So here's just one tip on how you can grow an exceptional brand through reputation marketing. My belief is that you should start with the focus of recall. And recall is something that if you're a brand manager, you might be familiar with. For a lot of us digital marketers, it may be a new concept. And what I'm talking about here is not the recall of a product, because it is faulty, but the ability to recognize and recall information about your brand. So you've succeeded if your message can be recalled. And as a brand, we think about that in many terms. You fail to communicate if your message cannot be recalled. And this is a problem for reputation in particular. So if we think about a reputation recall and we put it in the context of a brand recall versus a reputation recall, this is how I see it playing out. A brand recall traditionally would be something like, when I mention retail stores, do you recall the names of certain brands like Walmart or Target, or possibly Amazon, in terms of just talking about how to shop and something that's kind of disruptive and interesting. I believe that if we look at reputation recall, that is looking for the specific kind of points of value or differentiation that are really contributing factors to the positive or potentially negative reputation of the brands that are recalled. So when we discuss favorite retail stores, I might recall Walmart, but it doesn't mean it's my favorite. And if I do recall Target, what is it that I specifically recall about Target? For me in particular, I'm going to love that they have this unisex approach to how they separate toys. Children's toys don't have to be pink and blue, boy and girl. And they've had this huge campaign that ended up becoming this amazing marketing campaign and content strategy that got them a lot of attention because they focused on something that was important to them as a value and as a point of differentiation. And that really aligned very well with their target demographic and customer base. And a lot of their employees loved it as well. So it helped their reputation grow. They're also very well known for the investment in the design community and the home goods that they have and the aesthetic of them. They also have this huge selection of organic and all-natural products. So there's starting to become a very clear reputation that Target is known for. And that's why you get a lot of memes and jokes and people that just organically talk about Target all day and link to their various products or new campaigns that come out, because they're doing a lot that makes us excited about the brand and want to engage. In the case of recall, there are a couple of other things to note. You can have an unaided reputation recall and an aided reputation recall, just like unaided brand recall and aided brand recall. What I mean here is that in the unaided sense, if you are unprompted when discussing reputable companies in your industry, will someone just automatically bring up your brand? If not, you might have some visibility issues. It might not be that you have a reputation problem, but that you just don't have enough of a reputation. And we work with a lot of clients that come to us where they just say, we need to be known. We need more visibility. We need awareness. We don't have something great about us yet. We don't even know what that is. And then in the case of aided, that is when prompted, can someone recall the actual message that you're trying to convey? So if you think that your reputation is ABC, but someone recalls XYZ, then you've got a disconnect in your reputation and what you're trying to achieve. And that's probably going to cause reputation problems and make everything more expensive, especially in the marketing sense. So making this very, very specific in terms of what you can do, you can define your reputation objectives and message. This sounds very, very obvious, but it's not. And more often than not even more often, every single client that comes to us, we have to end up working with them and focusing their message, no matter how big, whether they're a Fortune 100 or a small B2B. Everyone, we start here and realize there's room for opportunity. Here's one example of someone that is doing a great job. It's not our client because with reputation work, we have to sign a lot of NDAs. So I'm happy to discuss those in private, but we can't discuss them publicly. Not yet, we're working on some though. So this is 7th Gen, and I share them because I love them. I think they totally align with my values, and they're a great organization that's been disruptive in the sense of really opening a whole new industry of plant-based products. So I was on their website and I wanted to see, could I quickly identify their mission and their message? And I wanted to see if anyone could kind of figure out where that's sitting. There it is, it's right at the top. How many of us take our mission and put it right in the header of our website and make sure that it's visible on every single page of our site? Many of us do not. More often than not, you don't even have a clear message or mission, and it's not written out. We might find it hidden in an about page, but I love that they put it right at the very, very top. not only do they put it at the top, they also put it in navigation. So you've got the products, and then immediately next to products, mission and action. They're going to tell you what their mission is and how they're doing it. That's fantastic. Clear, simple, prioritized. That's going to help build their brand and help them focus. The one thing that I don't like is that when I actually get into it, the navigation then becomes very cluttered. So I think there's a huge room of opportunity here. They've got a lot of campaigns, but those campaigns really lose the point of the navigation, which was to identify mission. So I think that they could change that information architecture. And then when you actually get into the content itself, there's, I think, 7 or 8 pages that are structured in this format where your eye is just going all over all the pages. It's more of like a kind of an archive isotope type layout. But finally, on that very last link that says about, you get to what their mission is. That's kind of hidden in the first paragraph. And that's where they kind of reinforce who they are and what they're about, that they formulate plant-based products that are safe and that work, and that they nurture health for the next 7 generations. And then they immediately get into leadership. I think it's going to be laid out much clearer. And when you make a great information architecture, when you support your message throughout the site, when you have a great about section and area that really explains who you are and what you're about, then it's easier for everyone else to understand as well. What does this actually look like in the sense of outreach? Well, for 7th Gen, when I looked at BuzzSumo, some of the top content that they have, I thought it was interesting that by far the most successful piece of content in the last year was how to create fall scents naturally. Well, that perfectly aligns with plant-based solutions for home and family. They're finding ways to give their audience unique, interesting content that they desire that completely aligns. So when you have a clear message and mission and objective, all of that flows into content, which is then better received by your audience. And we've been able to implement this for clients and see everything improved. We got more organic links, we got more shares. We had the paid teams telling us that they were having way more success with a lot less spend. So make sure you have that very clear. On the link side, Lisa just went through some amazing campaigns. 7th Gen had a really fun one when they launched organic tampons. And this is an all-women conference, so let's talk about tampons. Why not? I think that this is a really interesting subject, and they have this fantastic launch for feminine hygiene title, What's in Your Hoo-Ha? They're having fun with it. There's no easy way to talk about tampons, but they were able to get 74 referring domains pointing into this page, including links from Glamour, the HuffPo, Teen Vogue, great content. And it was informative content. It was fun. Maya Rudolph did a vajingle where she sang about your vagina. It was fantastic. And it was funny. There was definitely a cost in having a known celebrity be part of this campaign. And I'm sure that there was some sponsored content involved as well. But it all still stems from their mission and what they're trying to achieve. So to recap, really, we're looking to do a recall test. Can every single one of your constituency groups recall your mission? And those constituencies can be your customers, shareholders, employees, community, etc. It goes on. Everyone is going to be a little bit different in what this looks like. You can start very simply just by auditing your assets to make sure that your mission and your key messages align. We do this where we start to look at every single property and website. We identify whether it's matching, not matching, where the issues lie. And then we also start to see just generally what does that look like. And when we have cases where something is not matching, it's usually causing issues. In this one particular client case, we have a situation where their LinkedIn doesn't match their Glassdoor description at all. And if your employees don't understand what your mission is, then how can they possibly communicate that to their clients or their customers and everyone that they have to talk to? And that becomes really a huge challenge. So in this case, we were able to identify that a lot of the reputation issues they were experiencing really stem from an employee base that's struggling and doesn't know why they're showing up to work and what they're doing. So start with a simple self-recall. Do you know your mission if I were to wake you up in your sleep? I had an amazing course with Paul Argenti, the grandfather of reputation, who teaches at Dartmouth. And he said, do this test where if I were to wake you in the middle of the night, could you or your employees or your customers remember why you exist, what you're trying to achieve? And if they cannot, then you have failed to communicate your message, and everything is going to be a lot harder in terms of marketing. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you very much. Very interesting ideas you shared with us. Could you please return to us?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Now I can see you. And Lisa, we would like to see you too. Thank you very much. Now we're going to our live conversation, to questions that we outsource from social media, from our listeners and subscribers. And first question that let's start with some general questions about effectiveness, about strategy. And first of all, could you, we'll start with you, Rhea. Could you tell us about metrics? What metrics do you use to measure the effectiveness of marketing, of reputation marketing, of influencer marketing, and so on?
Sure. So that's one of my favorite questions. So we have interesting news. As of last week or 2 weeks ago, Annie Cushing from Analytics joined our team as our Chief Data Officer. So we're so excited to have her on the team, and we're working together to basically look at how do we create real reputation formulas that span different industry groups, ideally with real-time dashboards and Tableau and data visualization. Really exciting stuff. But you can make your own little formula. And one of the things that I shared at MozCon this past year at 2016 was that we look at each one of those groups. And in every group, you're going to have different metrics. So you might have, on the employee side, Glassdoor, which can give you information on CEO approval rating. You can look at the overall company rating, whether they're going to refer a friend. You can also then go to Indeed, which has ratings. You can do internal exit interviews and surveys with your team. There's a lot that you can do team side with employees. You can look at how many are referring potential hires. On the customer side, of course, we can look at lots of sites like the Better Business Bureau or Consumer Affairs or any kind of review site that's online. I tend to not want to bring in some of the negative ones like Complaints Board. I'm not a fan of those guys, but really start to kind of put together these different data points across every constituency group. And then I look at normalizing the data basically in a sense, and then give an overall grade. And then we can, just like with SEO or content or outreach, we're tracking the number of mentions, the types of words or associations with those mentions. I don't like to just look at sentiment. I like to look at sentiment broken into different groups. And that helps provide some amazing information, because I don't care that 90% of your mentions were negative. What I care is, of the negative, 45% were a customer service complaint, and 15% were a sales approach that didn't work or a promo code that didn't work. So we got to get that over to the dev team to fix or something. Anyways.
And how do you work with negative comments that affect brand? Do you make some, I don't know, some maybe analytics? Do you post some reactions to those negative comments, so company gets negative comments? How do you work with that?
With the client in particular? Is that what you're asking, is kind of how do we manage the negative reviews with the client, right? So I like to have the data speak for itself. I never want to go into a client and tell them subjectively that, hey, you're really bad at this. No one wants to hear that. But what I like to do is collect a lot of that data, give it to them in a presentation form or a spreadsheet of some type broken out by topic, and then say, 32% of your engaged audience felt that this about this thing, and it gives them real quotes, ideally with someone's face or avatar, so that they can see this is a real human. We want to marry that to a real customer data if possible, because a lot of the times it's easy for clients to say, oh, that's just our competitor. Our competitors just don't like us, so they're just doing that because it's a competitor. No, a lot of the times it's not your competitor, it's your customers, and you don't want to hear them.
So you should just listen to your customers and try to improve. So
yes.
Thank you. And Lisa, what do you say? What metrics do you use to measure the effectiveness? And what can you say about?
Okay. So in terms of measuring the effectiveness of links, we have our own kind of metric in-house of the value of these. But I could say that I think most people in search does use different tools like Moz and Majestic, things like domain authority, trust, and so on, to be able to judge whether a link is more worth than another link, and from what sites to judge to actually outreach to. I would say though, just as useful as that is also looking into metric like, do they have readers? Like, do they have a social following? Do they post things regularly? Is this the actual authority sites? Like most of the sites we target are really big authority sites, publishers and so on, so that's quite obvious. But there will also be ones that aren't so obvious, like should we be targeting this, or is this likely to look like it isn't deemed as useful for humans? And if it isn't deemed to be useful for humans, we wouldn't outreach to it. That's right.
I'm going to hop onto that really fast. One thing that we did was we created an old employee from a long, long time ago. He was awesome, Phil. He put together this quality matrix for us. Oh, that's terrible. Okay, it's gone. So the quality matrix was exactly what Lisa's talking about, where we said, okay, if we are trying to achieve a link, this is the industry, and we have 3 other industries along here that we can get links from that are relevant. But if something is too far out in relevance, then that means that the average engagement on social engagement has to be higher, and the authority has to be higher. And if we're going to go further out in relevance, then everything else has to come up, which is where you get, like, right, if you can get a link from the HuffPo, it may not be directly relevant, but who cares? It's HuffPo. So
no, absolutely. And that being able to find the value of this, like there's some that are very obvious, and we kind of our metrics in house it's like it's a one number that goes from 1 to 500, and I think the importance in this is that like the ultimate link would be like score of 500, and that would be like the homepage of Apple. But what helps with this, being able to create a mechanism for scoring this, is that it becomes easier for outreach people to know that, well, I would rather try harder to get this link than to have to get 200 of these kind of quality links.
Yeah.
But like you say, it's really important also to figure out whether this has a good fit for the client. Like, for example, with that travel posters that we got, they were kind of related to kind of a green angle, and a lot of the sites that we got was related to kind of the eco-friendly and all of that kind of stuff, which technically isn't hotels and flights and holiday, but it's still a kind of section of content that is interesting for readers.
Thank you. And Lisa, speaking about outreach, you mentioned it. Well, how do you actually do outreach? What are the biggest challenges here?
Like, how to do outreach is just a process. So it is reaching out to someone, finding their details, which you can use loads of different tools. There are loads of tools that are kind of from the PR industry that are very useful to use. But just having those tools doesn't make you good at outreach. Two people can do exactly the same thing and get totally different results. I think more than anything, the most important thing for being able to be successful at outreach is the kind of mindset that people have. the kind of grit and the kind of hustle that keeps people trying, even when they get no. Because in outreach, you get no 50 times a day. You get people turning you down constantly. So you have to have a kind of a mindset and a ability to get over those things and keep on going. And that is a very specific kind of set of criterion in people. So it's not about experience and finding people that necessarily have the experience in it. It's very much like a mindset, or at least a seed of a mindset that they already have, and then developing that. The tools and how to and the formatting and all of that, anyone can learn. But the mindset is definitely like a DNA that will make someone really good at outreach, is not ever giving up. Always kind of continue going, even if 50 people tells you no in a couple of hours, still believing that this is worthy. That's the most useful thing in outreach.
I love that answer.
Rhea, do you have to add something?
No, I just love her answer. It's so true.
Great. I'm really happy to hear it. And so we have another question about here about creative campaigns. Creative campaigns. What kind of assets work best at the moment about creative campaigns? For example.
So I think I really there's some really great ones. So what's happening?
Do you wish to start?
Yeah. Seeing I've talked about it, probably would make sense. So I think the most useful kind of thing that working at the moment, the kind of the safest one, that seems to work continuously, is using data. Data is quite a safe way of doing creative campaigns. So using a set of data, displaying in a way that hasn't been done before, works really well. Yet I would also say very simple things like those images or those kind of arty kind of posters and stuff as well works really well at the moment, until every Tom, Dick and Harry starts doing it, and then it won't work.
Rhea?
Yeah,
getting back to you, please.
Okay. Did you have a different question, or I can keep going on that one?
Should I repeat?
Oh, no. So on our end,
do you have any ideas? Maybe something more interesting thoughts about creative campaigns?
Yeah. So on the data side, I agree. And one of the most successful pieces we've done for a client, which I think is a great example because they're in this very non-sexy subject of, I'm trying to not give it away here. They're in professional services in an area that everyone who hears what they do automatically has a negative connotation of the industry. So without giving it away, I'll say that for the last 7 years, we've worked with them, where every year at the end of the year, we do this huge industry report, and we pull data from all of these different state-specific resources. And so we're looking at various government departments the moment that they publish the data, and then we take that data, we split it out by county, we visualize that map, we look for the trends, the differences, and we've been doing it for 7 years now, so we've got some really great data. And we're able to identify in that state whether the state is getting safer for this particular space, and why or why not on a county level, which becomes really great for hyper-local media attention and the ability to get news media coverage, industry-specific coverage, and on the social side, people love seeing it come out and they share it in the community, all the employees share it. So I think that the data especially is great, and when you can map that data over time, we're loving industry surveys, ongoing quarterly reports, annual reports, things like that. And it just depends on the industry that you're in, but that's a good kind of non-sexy suggestion.
Yeah, exactly. Like using data that can seem really boring and making that appealing to the general public works amazingly. In fact, I would say that a big proportion of the campaigns we launched last year had some kind of data in it, and using data that might already have been there, but been online, but creating it in a way that people can actually digest. So working in things like financial services kind of industries, or accounting, etc. Like it is no such thing as there is an industry where you can't do creative campaigns. That is BS. I'll be careful not to swear.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. And ladies, could you please share your advice about keeping a balance between long-term and short-term strategies? I mean, when your client wish to get results right now, right here, and how do you find maybe some points of balance, and how do you explain how it works to your client in long term? So
Sure.
if it will not work in short, so it will not work for short term, and your client will not get result right here, right now. How can you explain it to your client?
You want to? I'll hop in on this one. So
Okay.
we want to set expectations very early on. We want to define a measurement plan. There's a lot that, as an agency, we've had trial and error with account management and client management, and we've been around that. I started this company when I was 26 years old, and so we've made some mistakes along the way. And one of those early mistakes was, just trust us, and we'll do a monthly report, and we won't talk that often, but every month we'll deliver, here's where you're at. And it didn't work well. What we realized is that we need to have a lot more touch points with the client. We have to talk to them weekly, bi-weekly, and we have to set a very clear measurement plan from the very beginning. These are the objectives. These are what we're going to achieve within this quarter. This is what's reasonable. And we have a lot of really good data that we can look at from tools like Moz. I love Moz's new Keyword Explorer tool because it gives you difficulty. And when you're able to assess the type of difficulty of keywords that you're able to achieve with SEO, then you can really look at, okay, is this something that I could probably rank on in a week, or is it going to take a lot longer? What's my approach? How quickly does it take to get the content created? From the time it's published, it's going to take about 3 months to see those keywords mature and really start to own, and 6 months to just take off. We've got some great case studies that we share with our clients, and we just really explain the process from beginning to end. And then we look for a few quick wins. So we have to have the quick wins to gain trust in the very beginning. And then once we start to get that nice little curve, right, at that point they go, I don't know if, yeah, okay, hopefully it's curving in the right direction.
Okay.
At that point they go, all right, where do we go from here? Okay, can we get a stronger gap analysis and go, let's, like one of our clients said, I want to invest in that for 6 months. Go, now that we've seen it work in a small case here. So.
Great. Lisa, do you have something to add?
Yeah, very, very similar to Rhea. It's the way that we do it is very similar in that it's all about communication early on and making sure they realize how long it will take before they see any results. We also have, and like Rhea, I think actually me and Rhea started about the same year. Was it 2009 you started?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same year. So we've kind of got this kind of same age business, and I think the big thing that I learned the hard way was that we really needed to front load a lot of the work. So. Yeah. Because even if people say they understand that, yeah, it will take minimum 6 months before they see any results, they say that, and then they still start looking at the clock at 3 months. So we realized that we always insist on any new clients, we do the first 2 campaigns in the first 2 months. And although it seems like a lot, we have to do that in order to be able to get a momentum and get that really high kind of coverage and boom straight away. And that way we kind of learned to be able to show them as early as possible. So our results in terms of the rankings does usually take longer than 6 months if it's competitive. But at least by having 2 campaigns launched very quickly in succession, they can see the results of that in terms of the kind of links and the value and the social share and all the other stuff. Which really helps it. But that was kind of learned from thinking that what they said is what they would stick with. But that is never really the case, really.
And then you have like real tangible work in their hand too, and that's huge.
Yeah, and also I find like what's also really interesting is that, and you kind of also have to kind of just learn as you go, is that you get to, it's so much about the relationship with the client and how they are able to get things done. Because even with the best will in the world, and you're saying like, yeah, we can get all this done, if they are not responsible for doing some of these things as well, you can fail by default, and it will never seem like it was anyone else than your failure. So getting that kind of commitment from everyone, and getting that involvement for everyone, like you were saying as well, Rhea, about the meetings and being very much communication as much as possible, especially at the start.
I'm laughing right now because I read a report recently that shared that it showed that of all agencies, only 2% of agencies feel that the client's legal review process is working effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I probably would say that too. Yeah, that's the thing that holds us back the longest, is those review processes on the big brands, I would say.
Yeah, we got to know what we can do early.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. And one last question we have. What do you think? There are many different strategies, many different approaches, many different practices we can see now. And what do you think about practices that everyone is talking about right now, but you do not actually recommend to do this, to acquire this process maybe in your business? So
influencer marketing.
Yes, I agree. Second, and blogger outreach for no apparent reason other than blogger outreach. It's completely wasted unless you have their real kind of attention and you have some serious budget in being able to target properly. Blogger outreach, and particularly influencer marketing, is just like wasting your money.
There's so many dollars, exactly. I've seen so many clients pour a lot of money into it, and it's okay to have a spokesperson. There are many cases where a spokesperson doesn't make sense, or it's such a short campaign with so much money. We had one client that spent just an astronomical amount to get an A-list celebrity, and they had a 3-month campaign. At the end of the 3 months campaign, they had to lay off their entire marketing department and were gutted down to 3 employees because all their money was in this and it didn't work out. And so I'm not a fan of it. I know that it can work, but it's a front for having relationships with people. And I see a lot of clients saying, well, can you do influencer marketing for us? Yeah, we don't have a great reputation, but do influencer marketing. Well, I can't fix that.
You're just rolling shit in diamonds.
Yeah. I love it.
It makes no sense at all. And then you're right. It basically says that. It means that you haven't gotten a good enough product or good enough reputation that you can actually market. You have to get someone to say that this is good.
Exactly.
Probably ask yourself some serious questions.
So you really need to use personal approach to any company, to any brand, so any product. It should be individual.
It's the reputation marketing side of this. This is why I got into reputation marketing, because we were doing link building and we were trying to do it at scale, and we're doing it with huge brands. But you know what? The brands were flawed. In one case, they were getting clobbered by a disruptive startup that showed up, one that we all know the name of, and they were becoming obsolete overnight. I can't solve the fact that you have a business model that is dying. And that is what everyone says when we try to do outreach. So it doesn't matter how much, it doesn't matter how many links we get, it doesn't matter how effective the content is, it doesn't matter how many relationships we've built, your business model is dying. And so unless you're going to do the hard work of figuring out how to improve that, like my job is completely out of scope at that point. That's where we're struggling, and that's where we said we got to get into a different space. And this is like business consulting, and it's rooted in digital. And I think that is the thing that we excel at as SEOs. And as digital marketers, we have access to so much information and data that we can share with people. And when we share that data, suddenly the communications team over here who doesn't have the data goes, oh, wow, we can do a lot with this. But they need someone like us to give them that data. So that is why we are here.
Thank you, Rhea. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, ladies, for your cool reports and for this live conversation with many great ideas. Thank you, ladies. And goodbye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Good night, Lisa.
No.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thank you very much for being with us for for a quite long time, I would say. We are I believe we are live for more than 6 hours right now, and so we are super excited because we are closer to US, and that's why we have more US speakers. It's evening here in Europe, but really I think like quite an early morning.
Not too early, 11 a.m.
Okay, 11 a.m. 11 a.m. in US, and so I'm super excited to just share with you what an excellent speakers lineup we have in this section. We have Cindy Krum and Emily Grossman, and as well as Ashley. Yeah, Ashley. I'm sorry. I was like, putting it in an order in my head. So as well as Ashley, and they're all from the same company. Are you sitting in the same room?
No.
Okay. Here is the thing. They are from the same company, Mobile Moxie, and I'm certain that you guys are aware about them. They are doing great stuff when it comes to mobile, so they know how to do it. And if you're really struggling, that's exactly where you need to come and ask for help. And also you have today a unique opportunity to ask them questions. I think without additional adders, I'm sure our speakers will take some time to present them, to introduce what they do exactly. So you will just will be aware about that. And we are going just start doing that, and I'll share my screen because that will be a really interesting session when I'll be sharing a screen.
Okay. So I'll start with the introductions, okay?
Definitely.
Okay, so hi everybody, my name is Cindy Krum, and I'm the CEO of a company called Mobile Moxie, based in Denver, Colorado. We do mobile SEO and mobile marketing consulting, and we've organized this session to be a fireside chat to get everyone up to date on what mobile SEO means in 2017 and what it'll mean in the future, but we wanted to keep it really casual. So the three of us are going to talk about a couple different topics and kind of jump in with each other when we have something to add. So if we'll switch to the next slide, please. This is just a picture of me speaking at MozCon, which is one of the biggest SEO conferences in the US. This was 1,400 people, and that's a picture of my book about mobile marketing. So we've been doing this for a while. I've been doing mobile SEO since 2005. Emily is the next person on the phone. Emily, do you want to do your introduction?
Absolutely. Hi, guys. My name is Emily Grossman. I am the Director of App Strategy at Mobile Moxie, which means I get to involve myself in a lot of all the fun new app stuff that's been happening. So I work in a variety of different app-related optimization touch points. I work with app stores. I work with app deep linking. And it's a lot of fun. I know that we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about what exactly that means and how that works today. But my background has been in apps for a while now, and have been working with Mobile Moxie on the mobile front out of Denver, Colorado for the past few years. So if you want to follow me along on Twitter, I'm also at Gutes, and you can ping us there with questions or anything like that.
Ashley is the last person on the line. Ashley, say hello.
Hi, everyone. I am the newest member of the Mobile Moxie team, but I'm a Google top contributor in Webmaster Central. I've been doing technical SEO for a long time, and I love learning more about speed, security, and the mobile first index. So I'll keep it short. I know we have some background noise.
Alex, I think we have some background noise here. That sounds like it fixed it.
That's better.
Hold on.
All right. So,
Oops. Is it okay right now? No?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
That's great.
Thank you.
right, so to get us started, we're going to start with the first topic. We're going to talk about mobile SEO best practices. So Alex, if you want to jump to that slide on your screen.
Just, I'm not sure why. Do like, it might happen because you are like, you've also opened simultaneously our stream on our website, but you don't do that, yeah?
No. I don't have it on.
But, it might be like, here is, yeah. Okay, I'll stop sharing screen. Just, it might be because of that. I don't know, because like, just, I have no idea, but let's just, try, because I don't think that having an echo is really good. So.
And we'll share the slides with everyone after too, so you guys will have have the slides to look at, but we can just talk through them.
Okay.
For the meantime.
Well, can I ask you whether I discontinued sharing a screen? On.
It looks like you stopped sharing
Okay,
screen.
but we still have an echo, which is really right. Okay, well, it's not like really loud. It's not really loud one, but still like not really nice. Okay, we will try, and I'll just I'll communicate with our technical crew as well.
Okay. I'm not hearing the echo from my side, so let me know if you guys hear it. So the first topic we wanted to talk about with everybody today is mobile SEO best practices for 2017. Talking a little bit about the basics, but also some of the new announcements that have come out. So I'm going to start asking some questions to Cindy and Ashley. And if you guys watching at home have any questions, feel free to tweet us or share your questions with Alex, and we'll try to get to them as they come up. But the first question that we thought everybody would want to know about is, what does Google care about most when it comes to mobile?
Right. And so Google has been talking about mobile for a long time now, but they've given historically a lot of conflicting suggestions. For a while, they wanted everyone to have M-dot websites and use rel alternate and rel canonical, and then they started pushing really hard for responsive design. But the problem with responsive design was developers didn't know how to do it to make it fast. And so you were using one set of URLs for both mobile and desktop, but they were really slow everywhere. And Google really wants a good user experience. So the newest recommendation still includes responsive design, but they are focusing a lot more on encouraging webmasters to make their sites very, very fast. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. But the biggest push started about 1.5 years ago with the mobile-friendly test and the mobile-friendly designation in the SERPs. And a couple of months ago, they stopped showing whether or not a page was mobile-friendly in the SERPs, but it's still part of the requirements. They stopped showing it because about 80% of the web had achieved a mobile-friendly status. And the way they were determining if a site was mobile-friendly was if it was reasonably fast, and if the Google bot could crawl the JavaScript and the style sheets. And then there were a couple other checks that were pretty broad about, did it have the right size indications in the code? So was the font size showing up appropriately? Was the color and the scrolling showing up appropriately? Things like that. And so that's the main thing, is even though you don't need to look for the mobile-friendly designation in the search results anymore, it's still important to use the mobile-friendly test to make sure that it's fast enough and that everything is crawlable, and then using Search Console to fetch and render pages as the mobile crawler to make sure you know what they're getting. Other things include not having interstitials and stuff like that.
So that's kind of the really big, basic SEO 101 for mobile in 2017. But to get a little bit more granular, what do you think that small businesses in particular should be thinking about with regard to mobile optimization?
So small businesses have sometimes a different set of things that they need to worry about for mobile, especially if they're trying to drive foot traffic or trying to drive people to call to schedule appointments. So things like restaurants need to be focusing on maps and understanding how searches for their brand name look on mobile phones from all over different areas in a city or different cities if they're a chain that happens in multiple cities. But then the other thing that gets a lot of small business mobile queries would be things like home repair and like plumbers or anyone who you would be looking for to call to book an appointment or to book a consultation at your house. B2B does happen, and shopping does happen, but for the most part, the small businesses, they're looking for driving calls and driving foot traffic. So it's a different strategy where you focus more on the maps and more on your location relevance.
And so, I think that this is really interesting because there are a lot of different ways to show that you have location relevance. And if you're a small business, you might not know about all of the different ways that you can sort of mark up your website to explain to Google where your various businesses are located. Can Ashley, maybe you can talk a little bit about how businesses that have multiple different locations can optimize for mobile experience?
Yeah, one of the primary things that we like to recommend for people to do is to make sure that they are marking up their location data with structured data. JSON-LD works best, but that way, regardless of the browser experience or if they're having difficulty crawling your content, you send up an immediate flag of this is where I'm located, and they can parse that and serve that as appropriate, whether it's in the desktop and mobile, but even on different products like Google Home, where there might not be a browser at all, they'll have that information quickly.
And Ashley, is it schema? Is it H cards? What's Google pushing for in terms of structured data?
So schema is going to be the wider vocabulary, and the H entry cards are great for showing it. They also have markup for all different types of local businesses. So whether you're retail, even down to the level of a shoe store, you could use schema to specify what you're offering. Webmasters will have different options for implementing them on the site. So JSON-LD is the easiest generally to insert and easiest to manage, and that's what Google has started to lean toward. Initially, they also offered RDFA and microdata. Those can be a little trickier. So it seems like Google's leaning toward JSON-LD as their preferred method, even though the other ones are still live and acceptable.
And all of that documentation, I think, is available on Google's website, but also on schema.org, right, Ashley?
That is, and if people ever have questions with confusing documentation, they can just ping us.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and also in Search Console, they can test out most of the schema that Google understands. There's a tool where you can just drop in a URL or drop in the actual schema to see how Google interprets it.
Yeah, they have a great dashboard that scans the whole site, or an external tool that goes per page. So you can get lots of data even without your Webmaster Central account, but I always like testing there first.
And then the other thing beyond that, for getting a map result or a click to call, is just doing a good job with what they call NAP in local SEO, which is name, address, phone number, making sure that all of the business directories in the country that you're working in have the right name, address, and phone number. So if those things change, it can be kind of a bit of a task to go on the internet and find all of the old addresses or phone numbers and make sure that they're updated. But having matching data, Google tries to crawl the internet and see all the different data and match it up. And when it doesn't match, it's less likely that you're going to rank, because Google doesn't know which one to rank.
I have a quick anecdote to that I'm going to throw in there. Did work for a department store that had a lot of different locations, and their click-to-call wasn't working or showing up in the knowledge graph because of the encoding on the telephone. So if you go to w3.org to do HTML validation, they'll validate the format of your telephone number. So even beyond just structured data, go use the old school best practices of keeping really clean code in CSS. It'll help you get that extra from what you're putting in.
Awesome. Well, I want to jump back a little bit. So we just talked a lot about what local businesses can do and how to optimize for sort of a local mobile context. But we also talked, Cindy, you mentioned page speed and speed being so important to Google, especially in 2017. What are the must-do best practices for businesses that want to speed up their sites, that want to achieve better page speed?
So the main thing is to use the Google Page Speed tool, and they have a new one that's much more user-friendly, but I like the old one. They're both still available. And you can access them also through the mobile-friendly tool. Use that tool to get feedback on how you're doing page by page. So make sure you test every template on your site and see what Google thinks about it. We try and get our clients at least into the yellow. And if possible, into the green for both mobile and desktop rendering. The biggest opportunity there usually is to make sure that the content on the site, not just the HTML, but the images, JavaScript, CSS, that all of that is caching, ideally with a CDN like Akamai or Amazon Cloud Hosting or something like that, so that it can be served really fast, but also that it can be saved locally to the person's phone, so that it doesn't always have to be fetched fresh from the server. If you don't set a caching expiry date, what will happen is the browser will think that it has to get it fresh every single time. But if you say, for instance, our logo isn't going to change, so you don't need to get it fresh every time, cache it for a year, then that saves on the number of round trips, and it makes the whole experience a lot faster. The other thing to look at is potentially even AMP. AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages, and even though it's been showing on desktop now as well, it is very, very fast. And part of why it's so fast is because it uses Google's cloud to do the caching for you. So having caching set up is really important. Compression on your server with gzip or things like that. Those are the easiest wins that a lot of SEOs forget to check.
And Cindy, you mentioned that Google has a tool for this. Are there any other tools that people can use to check their page speed, to see what their caching lifetimes are set to?
Yeah, the tools that I use the most are URI Valet will tell you how many round trips you're making and what kind of round trips, and it'll tell you the status code on all of the elements that are required to build the page. You can also just use basic feedback from tools like Screaming Frog that will give page speed and load time, and then you can sort the feedback by URL and say, okay, so these are the pages that are having the most trouble. What do these pages all have in common? Is it always one template? Stuff like that. A lot of the other tools have some level of page speed feedback, but those are the ones that I rely on the most and the ones that seem easiest.
Great. So I think that, you know, the big question on everyone's mind right now is about mobile first indexing. Google made a big announcement that they were going to switch to mobile first indexing, and there's been a lot of press about it. There have been a lot of opinion pieces. There have been a lot of speculation around this. But let's quickly just talk about what the basics are. What is mobile first indexing, and why is it going to be so important for 2017?
Okay, so Google has talked about how developers need to build websites for a mobile first experience, which basically means that developers should think about the worst case scenario, which would be a tiny screen and a slow network, and build for that. And then you can build out the page for bigger screens and faster networks that can create a great experience, but they need to first think of the worst experience and make that good, or as good as possible. And they've been saying this for at least 2 years, that developers need to build for mobile first. But even though developers were building for mobile first, Google was still crawling and indexing content as a smartphone or with a kind of a desktop perspective. And so if companies still hadn't gone responsive and had a desktop site and a mobile site, they were preferring the desktop site and using most of the content on the desktop site to drive indexing and ranking. And the mobile version of the site was kind of like a bonus secondary, but it didn't index or drive the rankings on its own. Now they're switching that, and they're saying the mobile version of the content needs to be the best version of the content. It needs to include all the links to sitemaps, robots, text. It needs to give all of the schema, and it needs to basically not be missing the biggest indexing signals, which a lot of companies were doing. They're saying, oh, Google only cares about the desktop. As long as we do the rel alternate and rel canonical, Google will understand that the mobile page exists, but we'll put all the indexing signals on desktop. Now Google switched it and said, hey, there are more mobile searches happening than desktop searches, so we're gonna make the mobile version of the page the canonical one by default. So it needs all the indexing and ranking signals there. And the desktop will be kind of a support figure. So that just means if you have the separate mobile and desktop pages, you need to move the code over, make sure it's all there. If you have a responsive design website or a selective serving website, you need to make sure you understand what a mobile phone, what code is being shown to a mobile crawler. If the crawler comes in and says, you know, my screen is this size and I'm this kind of a phone, are we in the responsive design or selective serving using the server to send all of the right code, or are we sending an abbreviated version that might not tell the full story and might not give us the full indexing benefits or full ranking benefits?
So to sort of break this down a little bit further, and Ashley, feel free to jump in on this question, but let's go back to sort of the small business question. If you're a small business and you've got a responsive design site, do you have a lot to worry about? Not much to worry about? How big of a change is this going to be for a small business compared to, say, a larger business?
So I think people see responsive as a panacea. It's not. So just going responsive and flipping a switch doesn't solve all of these problems. You need to be testing for the slow connections and the slow devices and the smaller devices and the larger ones. And I feel like this is really important and fits into Google's message of building for the next 1 billion users. So finding a way to load and interact with your site in the cheapest possible way is important, even for small businesses. So the biggest thing I can do is make sure to test your page speed and be using your own site on a mobile device. It seems like a lot of people build a mobile site, they know they have a mobile site, but they don't take a step back and use their site as a mobile user and try to go through all of the tasks that they're asking real users to do. So responsive gets you a lot of the way there, but I do think you need to pay particular attention to some of the more important things like speed.
And to sort of get this down to the most basic, let's quickly rattle off maybe what are the most common mistakes that we see SEOs making in terms of mobile optimization, or even just mobile site owners making with their mobile sites.
Blocking them in robots, or not letting the mobile versions of a page be crawled at all.
Yeah.
And blocking embedded stuff like CSS and JavaScript.
Yeah, rendering is super important, not just for understanding the UX, but Google will use rendering in order to rank your page now. So the speed in rendering also is important, but I see usually a big problem is users will just go in, or web designers will go in and they'll strip all the CSS and a lot of the rich, juicy content and serve something that's very bare bones for mobile users, and that might work for some, but the idea is that you want to get the same great content regardless of your device. So don't go in and snip out all of the rich content or the deep information just for mobile users.
Also interstitials, any kind of interstitials or overlays. If you have one that's trying to get people to sign up for emails or trying to get people to download the app, if it's covering content when it's displayed on a mobile phone, you could be creating massive indexing problems because it would only get the interstitial potentially, and then all the pages would come across as duplicate, because all Google can see is the interstitial. And we've actually recently seen someone who started to get a massive site de-indexed because of an interstitial like that. So,
and to be like very explicit about this too, if you do use an interstitial that is not, let's say, a required interstitial by law, like the cookies requirement, or say a interstitial that asks you for your age if you're an alcohol promotional site or something like that. Google's actually said that they will consider you not mobile friendly, which has a direct ranking impact on your site. So that should come up hopefully if you're doing mobile friendly tests, but always good to take a look at those interstitials because they probably can sneak up on you. All right, I think we're doing well on time, but let's go ahead and switch topics. If you guys have any more questions about mobile SEO best practices for 2017, please feel free to tweet them at us or send them to Alex, and we'll get to them as they come up.
All right. Emily, you ready to be up?
I'm ready.
Good, because I have a few questions for you.
Awesome.
So app optimization, this is an area that's a little bit different, well, a lot different from just websites and from mobile sites. So what can you tell me about, like, what are ASO and app pack optimization, and what should users know?
So the term ASO gets thrown around a lot. Technically, it stands for App Store Optimization. Some people say it stands for App Search Optimization. I think that that might be, that's what Cindy likes to call it. When we talk about search optimization, we tend to include a lot more things. But if you are just talking about App Store Optimization, it's really interesting because we're sort of taking a step back from Google being your primary search engine, and we're looking at app stores, either the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store, specifically as being their own type of search engine. And these search engines really are only looking to surface apps to users. So app search optimization, or app store optimization more specifically, can be a little more interesting because you're dealing with different search engines, and they require different pieces of information, and they also have different ranking signals. The sort of more interesting thing, I think, on the app store side is that in a lot of cases, these app stores don't have as much information to look at as websites. If you think of an app being submitted to a store, usually the process goes that you're sort of submitting an app package. It's a piece of software. And while there is a review process, typically the way that the app stores work is they're not looking inside your app specifically. What they're doing is they're sort of cataloging this file, and they're asking you to submit external metadata. And that metadata are things like titles and, in some cases, lists of keywords or an app description that have you describe sort of holistically what your app does. And what this really means is that the app stores are sort of using this more descriptive element and these pieces of metadata to rank content, as opposed to ranking that content specifically by what it actually is, or the words that are on a web page, for example. And this can lead to really interesting things in terms of optimization. But the sort of end result, as you might expect from your own experience as a user, is that a lot of people search app stores for head terms. So there's not very much long tail. You're not going to necessarily go into the Google Play Store and search for how to boil water, but you might search for a recipes app or a science app or something that you think would give you that information. And so a lot of the sort of app store optimization is really focused around optimizing for head terms or sort of big concepts about what apps do. There are other ranking factors that go into app store optimization. It can get very complex. And if you have specific questions about that, please let me know. But I think understanding that the way that the app stores work is fundamentally different than Google is really fascinating. This is also cool because app packs are sort of a new thing. If you've seen them, those will show up in actual Google search results. So not in the stores, but in google.com or in the Google app. If you search for something in Google and you seem to have a strong intent for an app, so maybe you're searching for kids games, Google may show you a cool little tile. It looks like a little square. Sometimes there are only 3 apps and you get a little narrow tile with 3 little tiles inside of it. Other times they'll show 6. At one point we saw more than 6. I think now I'm seeing either 3 or 6 most of the time. And there'll be colored little tiles, and it'll say some basic information about the app. Usually it's been the title and its star ratings and the price. So if it's free, it'll say free, and if it's $2.99, it'll say $2.99. And the interesting thing about these app packs is that when you click on an app in one of the app packs from google.com, you get sent to the app store that correlates to the device that you're searching on. So if you're on an Android device, they'll send you to the Google Play Store page for that app. If you're on an iOS device and you click on an app in an app pack, they'll send you to the iOS App Store. And the interesting thing about these app packs is that they seem to be really focused around what we would call strong app intent. We used to see them showing up a lot on potentially more general queries. I used to see them on general terms like groceries, and now they're showing up more specifically around those app-related concepts. So anything that you could think of like a core functionality. So usually anything that has the word game in it, or camera, or GPS, or map, or things like that. Those are tending to show more of the app pack queries. But if you're searching for anything long tail or more general terms that don't seem to have that app intent, you may not see them. So it's really interesting to know, especially if you're not testing your searches on mobile devices, if your brand name queries are triggering these app packs, if any of your content is triggering these app packs, because it can create a whole new sort of realm of competition. I think one of the best examples is something like Craigslist, where there are a lot of Craigslist style apps, or this used to happen to Reddit all the time. Reddit sort of had these competitor Reddit apps that would show up in these app packs on devices for their brand name queries, and could be sending people to download third-party apps that they didn't actually create themselves. So these are interesting things that I think that any SEO should be aware of, even if you're a small and local business. It's good to test this and see if it's happening on any of your target terms. The other interesting thing, of course, about app packs is that they do take up space. So they impact reporting tools substantially. And if you're really only looking at reporting tools that test desktop results, you may not be seeing your actual ranking position on the mobile SERP, because if these app packs come in, they can take up to 6 slots, and that will change your ranking position substantially.
So
just to put a finer point on that topic, Emily, can you tell us, is one app pack with 6 or 3 apps worth 1 ranking position, or is it worth 6 and there are only 4 organic rankings below it?
So typically,
and do they always rank at the top, the app packs?
So we've seen them float around the page. When they first launched, they were always at the top. Now I've seen them in some cases at the very bottom. These might be test scenarios. It's always good to test your specific queries and find out where an app pack is appearing in your specific target term. But what we've seen is that they do tend to take up spaces that would otherwise be given to just a regular website URL. And so if there are maybe 10 positions on the page, and then the app pack comes in and takes up 3 of them, then we'll see really that there are only 7 remaining spots on the page. So that's really interesting, I think, for people to know in terms of, am I on page 1, am I on page 2? Sometimes it will depend on if there's an app pack triggering in each particular query and pushing down content. This, of course, can always change over time, but we've found that the reporting tools can get really, really inaccurate in cases where app packs are triggering all the time. So if you're in a games environment and you haven't been seeing these and you're checking your rankings on desktop, chances are you're probably getting a really inaccurate picture of what your actual visibility is. I think that Search Console does report on a lot of app kinds of content in Google search, which is great. So that's always something that you can check out. Search Console will not report on your app rankings within the app stores. So just remember to sort of keep those 2 concepts separate. There's your app store optimization, and then somewhat related to that, but reported on completely differently, is this app pack optimization.
Great. So how do apps get indexed? And what do webmasters need to know about app indexing and deep links or any of these other concepts that get thrown around?
Yeah, so this is, I think, the most exciting thing that's happened to apps in the past 3 years. if you remember when I was talking about app store optimization, one of the difficult things with apps is that you're trying to get users to discover your app, which might have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of screens involved, and it might be incredibly robust and full of information. But you only have 4,000 characters to describe what your app does, and you only have a very small amount of space to sort of tell them in a single title what everything your app is about. And so imagine trying to do SEO if all you could market was your homepage. This is kind of the real problem that app developers had for a long time, was that they would spend all this time creating a beautiful, expensive, rich experience app, and they struggled to get users to sort of re-engage and go back into specific app content once they downloaded it and gone through the home screen experience. So what sort of came up in the last few years was this concept called deep linking. And to put it really simply, what deep linking did was allow native apps to respond to specific URIs, which are basically URLs, in the same way that websites did. They could get a specific set of characters and open up the app to a particular screen, not just the home screen, and direct people to the content that they wanted to go to. And that was great. That was fantastic. The problem, of course, with deep linking was that it was something that without any sort of Google involvement, without any involvement from the search engines, really only amounted to users being able to send these sort of strange strings of characters back and forth to each other if they knew that that existed, or if developers were smart enough to sort of wrap them in a traditional URL scheme and get people to click on them. And that wasn't especially useful if you think about how much business the web gets from search engines, from search optimization. So app indexing was this really interesting concept that came out of this and said, what if we took these deep links and we associated them with m.sites used to work, where we would say, okay, we have this web URL, but if this person has the app installed, let's send them to the alternate version of this screen. And we have a string of characters that respond to that. And Google was able to sort of take in these app deep links and process them and index them with these web URLs so that they knew that they could send users to an app when they wanted to. And this, for a while, was sort of how this worked. People would mark up their websites with rel alternate tags that pointed to an app deep link, particularly on Android, which was the first sort of use case of this. And then sort of this evolved and has gotten slightly more complicated now, where instead of creating these separate deep link URLs for each app screen, what is now sort of the new concept of app indexing is that app developers can use the existing web URLs for their corresponding web content to open up the same content in their apps. So this gets a little bit more complicated, but it's sort of, if you think about Google's transition away from multiple URLs on the m.dot side, this is kind of the same thing. They're trying to sort of unify the singular URL, either opening your app or opening your website when you don't have the app installed. It's technically slightly more complicated, but the end goal here is, of course, the same. It's to allow app developers to have some search presence. The sort of new development on the app indexing side is a little interesting. So app indexing has always had this problem where part of the way that we work on Android can be completely different from the way that we work on iOS. And this is an issue for apps in general, but it's particularly an issue for app indexing. And you can really see that this is something that Google has struggled with in terms of writing documentation, but also that developers struggle with in terms of implementing app indexing in general. And there was this brief moment when both the Android side and the iOS side looked rather similar, and we all were very excited, but that has since changed again. So the new state of events for iOS is really interesting. Google sort of was working with a platform that Apple developed called Universal Links. And Universal Links is an interesting technology that Apple developed to sort of do what I just described. You sort of declare that a certain set of URLs on your website matches a certain set of screens on your app, and you allow that sort of singular group of URLs to either open the website or the app, depending on whether or not you have the app installed. And that's the basics of the universal links sort of protocol. It's something that Google latched onto and thought was really great, but they also wanted to know, outside of just using universal links, whether or not you had an app that you were interested in getting indexed. And so what they used to do was have you use what they call the Google App Indexing Pod, which is essentially a fancy packaged up version of their SDK. And the core of the functionality of this was to sort of let Google know that you had app content that you wanted indexed, to allow them to see that you were getting clicks from Google that were going to your app, to sort of potentially track that for analytics and something like Search Console, and to then be able to present your specific URLs in a search result differently. So they would be able to show an app icon in a search result, in a Google search result, and it would look like an app result if you had that app installed and Google knew that that app was installed and wanted to be indexed in Google search. When Apple made some updates recently, basically what Apple started restricting was something that Google was heavily using in this fancy packaged up version of their SDK. And it was so core to that functionality of them being able to understand who's clicking on these app deep links that they sort of removed that part of the equation. And now the only part of iOS app indexing is implementing Apple's universal links. And unfortunately, along with that, what's happened is that Google really cannot show app icons. They cannot give you any Search Console data around iOS. And what I think the end result is that, you know, app indexing on the iOS side is a bit of a misnomer. What they're doing here is presenting regular web URLs. There's nothing special about them. There's no app icon. You're not getting app-specific data about this. But if you've set up universal links, what's happening is that you're able to sort of redirect or route users from your web URL into the app that they have installed. So in some ways, the user experience is the same, but functionally, the indexing side is really not there on iOS. Now on Android, this is different. On Android, you can still have different URLs for your app content than your website. They don't like it, but they still do it and they'll still index them. You'll still see that app icon. You'll still get data in Search Console specific to your app. So you'll see how well your app deep links are ranking separate from your website URLs, or just your website URLs. So it's a little bit interesting on that front. If you're feeling sore about the iOS app indexing side leaving, I feel you. Obviously, we loved our app icons. I think that this is sort of a battle between Apple and Google in terms of, does Apple really want to limit a lot of this technology that's enabling app re-engagement? Do they know that they're doing that? It's really interesting. Or does anybody really care? That's, you know, the other side of this too, is these are giant companies that are potentially just sort of slugging along until they find a better technology to handle all of this.
So let me make sure everyone understands. So people who did a lot of the integration with deep linking and app indexing for iOS, does that still work? Or does it not work? And is there a ranking benefit?
So people that did the app indexing integration for iOS that implemented universal links, the main change for you is that you probably should remove the Cocoa Pod if you integrated it. That was for app indexing. That's something that Apple has said that they are sort of not interested in approving from now on. And so it's probably not a good idea to include that in your app anymore. The sort of user experience change is that you're not going to see your app icons in iOS search anymore. And you're not going to get probably any data from Search Console in the near future or maybe distant future. That sort of effort has been sort of completely squashed really by Google removing themselves from this equation. So if you went through the effort of doing iOS app indexing, your universal links will still work. You are still going to be sending users into your app from Google search results. The difference is that they just might not see that explicitly displayed in the search results before they click on your link. It might just look like a regular website link, and they won't really know that they're going into your app until they're there. That's sort of the main side of that. The rankings benefit question is really interesting. I would love it if Maria or John, if you guys are watching, if you guys wanted to clarify this. But once upon a time, the way that this rankings boost for app indexing was explained was that your website and your app were getting the rankings boost as a pair. So what we might speculate in this case is that if you're doing app indexing on the Android side, that is an indication to Google that you're doing app indexing, and they're giving your website and app combo a rankings boost. On the iOS side, when they're just presenting your website, it might still benefit from that boost that you're getting on the Android side, and it's redirecting users to your iOS app. So you could see it as the boost still existing, but it's not going to be an iOS app specific boost. So that's something to be aware of.
What about the old stuff from before the API when Google was saying put rel alternates to the app? Does that hold water now, or we don't know?
So the rel alternates to the app seem to still work on the Android side. Because the rel alternates to the app for iOS only existed in a beta context, and when Google went public with iOS app indexing, they decided actually to sort of trash the rel alternates on the iOS side and invest 100% in the universal links method. It really means that they're really not using the web markup on the iOS side at all, and they really haven't for some time. So if you, by some stroke of luck, had that working for you, please let me know, because I'd be very interested to see what's going on. But they shouldn't have been working, and they probably will not work unless Google changes their mind on how they want to handle iOS app indexing in the future.
So indexing is complicated.
Indexing is very complicated. And it can get much more complicated, especially when we talk about things like personal content indexing and different search engines like Apple too. But I want to sort of keep this at a minimum because I know that we've got a lot to talk about today. So if you have app indexing specific questions, I'm a nerd, I love this stuff. Please tweet at me. I will talk to you about app indexing forever. And I'll let Ashley ask me the next question before we get too in the weeds.
So what if a business feels too overwhelmed by all of the indexing issues, especially if they're just starting out? How else can they drive traffic to get more app downloads to get that ranking boost?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about app indexing is that it's really great if you're an app that has lots of downloads but struggles to get re-engagement, which means lots of users installed your app, but they kind of forgot that you exist, or they don't actually know how much content is in your app. Maybe you updated it and it has so much great information, and they don't know about it. So that's where app indexing shines. It's when you have users who've installed your app that you want to send back to your app. But if what you want is user acquisition, if what you really want is more installs, there are really two ways to do this. One is App Store optimization, which is what we talked about at first, sort of optimizing your metadata in the iOS App Store and Google Play Store for specific organic queries. The other interesting sort of way to get more users is to pay for them, and not in a surreptitious way by hiring someone in China to download 30,000 versions of your app. You want real users, and so advertising has become a really great way to get new users without having to deal with any optimization of sorts, or sort of light touch on your organic side. You can still drive quite a few hundreds or thousands or millions of downloads with just ads. Ads are great too, for a number of different reasons. Apple just recently decided that they're going to start running ads in their iOS App Store, so you probably have seen these. Those are called search ads. And they're really interesting. Apple has a really cool algorithm for how they'll surface different search ads based on builds, but also relevance. Bids and relevance. Google also has a in-store search ad option in the Google Play Store. So you can buy ads there. And you can also buy straight AdWords. You can buy ads in Facebook. You can buy them anywhere. And the great thing about ads for app acquisition is they tend to pay off in a lot of different ways. So not only do you get the download from the person who watched or clicked on your ad and thought your app was great and decided to download it, but that download also contributes to something called download velocity and also your total download volume, which are performance ranking signals in both of the app stores. So what we typically see, and I think what we've heard from a lot of our colleagues, is that when you increase your app downloads via a paid campaign, you actually see that back sometimes double in terms of your organic downloads too, because it's going to improve your organic rankings when you have these downloads. And it doesn't matter that they were paid, doesn't matter that they came from an ad, you got them. And that's what's important to these stores, is that a lot of people are downloading your app rapidly. It's a strong ranking signal, and then it helps you reach people organically too. So that's an exciting strategy.
So Emily, can you talk a little bit more about PPC in Google and advertising in Google, and what does that do to the SERP? Is it compelling? Because are we just throwing money and just dropping a little bit of traffic to get the organic boost, or is it really a great experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends what your goal is and what kind of app you've got. The AdWords side of things is really interesting, and I will tell you, I don't actually have a ton of experience on the PPC side. So there may be people that are much more proficient with these kinds of ad extensions than I am. But you can basically create an ad that has an extension that sort of says, I'm promoting an app. You can also create a sort of normal PPC campaign and add a little tiny extension at the end that says we have an app too. And those are interesting because if you don't care whether they download the app or just visit your site or your landing page, you can kind of get the twofer in that case, and hopefully it goes your way. The app stores are a little bit more targeted in that you're really looking for people that went to download an app. And so they tend to have really high conversion rates, which is great. The trouble is, of course, that you're also competing against 100 million other apps who may have targeted that same search term for the same reason. So it's super exciting to, to sort of see how this is changing. Search ads are new. Google Play's been at it for a while, but there are a lot of great case studies out there. I'll tweet some out later today. If you guys are really interested in search ads, I think that they can be really effective for not a lot of money. And like I said, you're also going to get that organic boost too.
What can users do, or what can businesses do if they want to participate in the app world and get mileage from that without actually taking on the cost of building an app? How do they get involved?
Yeah. Okay, so this is like where things start to get fun. So if you're a local business, probably don't want to develop an app. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you I love apps, and not everyone needs one. Very small percentage of businesses will actually get value out of an app because most businesses are probably just a mom and pop company that getting someone to download your app is such an expensive and brand cost process that really you might be better off investing that money elsewhere. But that doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of people that have spent the time to create these engaging apps. And usually for local businesses, that means things like Apple Maps. Apple Maps is an app on an iOS device that annoys a lot of people because it is Apple's default, often before Google Maps. Even though people want to use Google Maps, sometimes they find themselves accidentally in Apple Maps because it's so pervasive. And a lot of local businesses will get calls from Google My Business teams, and they'll hear all sorts of stuff from SEOs about how to optimize for Google Maps search and how to be in sort of local packs and things like that. And Apple is really quiet about Apple Maps. They don't really talk to a lot of businesses about this. But if you forget to put your business in an Apple Maps context or optimize your business listing in Apple Maps, it could be pretty costly to you for people that are trying to find your business from an iOS device. So what I would say is there's a great sort of way to add your individual business to Apple Maps. It's, I think, called Maps Connect. You can Google that, or however you want to find it. I can tweet it out. And you basically just add your business one at a time. If you've got a lot of businesses, if you've got over 1,000, you can contact them. They have a link at this at Maps Connect where you can sort of say, I want the email address of the person, or I'll mail this spreadsheet, because they realize that if you've got 1,000 businesses, you're not going to go through one by one and say, exactly what your business does. And then there are very specific strategies to optimizing for Apple Maps that are a little bit different from Google Maps. In Google Maps, for example, a lot of local SEO experts will say that Google doesn't want you to pick lots of different categories for your business. They want you to get as granular and specific as possible. And Apple Maps, it seems to be the opposite, where they want you to specify all of the different things or variety of categories that your business could possibly be in. So that's really interesting. The other interesting thing to know too is to look at how some of the other apps are presenting your business content. So Yelp is an interesting model. Yelp loves their app. They definitely prefer their app to their website. If you remember, they were one of the people that Google hated because they kept presenting this terrible interstitial on top of all their web content that said, download our app, download our app, download our app. And it was because they wanted everyone to go to the app and not to the website. So if you can appreciate that, imagine how many people are actually using the Yelp app because they either decided they didn't want to see that stupid interstitial anymore, or just because they enjoy Yelp or see it all the time. And then you can imagine that someone like Yelp too is actually trying to actively take advantage of things like deep linking and Apple search, and trying to get people to use their app instead. And one of the most recent things that they've done that's super interesting is that they've sort of enabled a piece of schema that allows Apple to present a little call icon next to their pages on an Apple search. So that sounds very complicated, but let me break that down. So let's say you're an iOS user and you're searching in Safari for something. I searched for my cat food store because I have a cat. She's in the back here. And my cat food store is called a Pet's Paradise. As I start to type that in mobile Safari, I'm starting to get predictive results, not from Google, but from Apple. And one of the predictions that almost always comes up when I type in a local business name is Apple Maps, and then secondarily Yelp. And when Yelp does this, it's really interesting because they'll put a little call icon next to the Yelp page. And when I tap on that phone icon, it'll call my local pet store instead of me actually having to look at the listing and go in. So there's sort of an interesting play there, right? Of course. But the key takeaway, I think, is that if you're a local business and you are interested in being on Yelp, making sure that you have a way really to track those phone calls and understand how many people are coming from that Yelp search could be really key for you to understand where your traffic is coming from. I think a lot of things in local right now are sort of getting shortcuts. You don't actually have to hit enter on that query to get the information that you want. I don't have to click through to that app deep link to go to the Yelp page to call my business. I can do it right from that Safari interface before I've even executed the search, and that can be pretty powerful.
That sounds awesome. And then I know Yelp's a really good example because they're so pervasive, but I imagine restaurants would go through, do some searches, and there are a few other big ones. So I know OpenTable is really big for restaurants, or Angie's List for home repair and lawn, all the fun care that comes with owning a home. So how do they get started? How do they figure out which of the big apps to be in versus going through in the old directory days in SEO and submitting to 2000?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it depends what your end goal is. But if you want to have visibility, one of the easiest ways to see where you can be visible is to check some of the more, I would say, concentrated markets and see which apps are competing there. And then to check in your local market and see which of those are the most competitive or the least competitive. And that can help you sort of filter down where you need to focus your efforts. I think TripAdvisor is a great place to look for a lot of local businesses. They sort of scan the gamut of restaurants, hotels, hospitality, things like that. They also tend to be more internationally pervasive. In some cases, Yelp and TripAdvisor will also give you an additional benefit in that the star ratings for businesses in Yelp and TripAdvisor tend to get repurposed in Apple Maps. So if you're interested in presenting a high star rating to users, making sure that you're getting high star ratings in Yelp and TripAdvisor is a great way to do that.
That's a good tip. Let's see. I have another couple questions for you. If someone is doing App Store optimization, how do you know it's working? Or how can you see your progress? Because I do know that so much of our industry is based off of measurement and making sure that we're seeing advances from all of this effort that we're putting in. So I love Google Analytics and Search Console on the website, but what do you do for the App Store side?
Yeah, this is a fun question because the tools that we use for ASO are really growing and expanding. I'm going to name off a lot of tools. If you have more or have questions about these, feel free to hit us up on Twitter and we'll tweet these out too. But on the ASO side, on the App Store optimization side, we like to use a variety of tools for keyword research. Sensor Tower is great. App Annie just released some cool new data about keyword research. There's a new tool called The Tool that's really great. Mobile Action has some information about this. There are a lot of tools that are great for keyword research, and specifically in the stores. Also, if you're running search ads on the iOS App Store, they try to give you sort of a search volume estimate. You can use that as well. The sort of reporting side of things, which I think is more maybe your question, Ashley, is how do we see if it's working, is iTunes Connect and the Google Play Store can report a lot of things for you, and they can tell you how many downloads you're getting organically and how many downloads you're getting from your paid side, and things like that. But if you are tracking rankings, for example, which is something that SEOs used to love to track, it's harder to track in traditional web SEO anymore because things are so different. But in the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store, things are really pretty much the same for every user. And so rankings tracking is really an effective way to look at visibility there. There are tools that report on that. I love App Annie. That's my favorite tool, but there are a lot of tools that do a great job on reporting here. The Tool is another interesting one that has some cool reports that'll show you sort of cool graphs and visualizations of the spread of your keyword targeting. Sensor Tower does also do that. Mobile Action has great reporting now, so lots of great information. I think Mobile Dev HQ also does this. And then on the app indexing side of things, we really look at Search Console pretty heavily. That's the most relevant information that we can get really from Google's side. Otherwise, we have to do everything pretty custom to look at what's going on. And of course, you can look at analytics from inside your app as well. But if you're really just looking for ranking positions, you're sort of looking at Search Console.
And I'll just throw out there, because it's my job, Mobile Moxie is also working on an API that's going to bring some of these layers of data together that previously have been separate. So keep an eye out for that.
That's a good one. Emily, last question. Biggest learning experience or takeaway from all the experience that you have working with apps?
Don't trust developers.
That's just a life lesson. That's not just apps.
No, I mean, it's interesting. I think, yeah, it's an interesting problem because I think what we've figured out working with businesses that are trying to integrate apps into their marketing side of things is that a lot of businesses historically haven't treated their apps the same way that they've treated their websites. They've treated them like products. Or sort of expected them not to have any SEO benefit ever because it wasn't previously available, or it's kind of like the redheaded stepchild of an organization in a lot of cases. The other hard part about this is that they're very segmented. If your iOS team doesn't talk to your Android team, and then all of a sudden I come in and I want to do a project where your iOS team, your Android team, and your website team have to all talk to each other, that's really hard. So I think that there are a lot of growing pains in companies that are trying to integrate their apps more fully into their whole brand offering. There are huge challenges with analytics, and the analytics on the iOS side in particular are very hard to get or isolate. There are a lot of great things that Apple is doing with privacy. Unfortunately, it makes it really difficult for us as marketers to find out when certain things are working or not working. And the sort of the one that I said at the beginning was, don't trust developers. I think like the hard part for them is that they're not SEOs, and especially for app developers, they've never really had to talk to an SEO before, and they haven't had to think about things like, is this going to be indexed? And am I going to send someone to this screen? Or what happens if I don't have content for them? And they're so used to people coming into their app from their home screen and going through a very traditional user flow. And all of a sudden now we're coming in with this concept of linking deep into the app. And it's very new for a lot of them. So I don't blame them. But I will say the biggest lesson that I learned is always double, triple check everything, especially app manifests if you're doing deep linking, and make sure that anything you're communicating to anybody that's actually implementing the work is very clear.
Well, and I'll throw in there that one of the complexities that Emily didn't mention too much is that iOS app developers and Android app developers and web developers, like we're joking, we love developers, mostly joking, but they don't speak the same language. So if they don't code in the same language, and so they don't speak the same language. So we've had teams that had massive misunderstandings about what one group had done in relation to another group based on just a misunderstanding of the vocabulary within one section or the other. So it can be quite challenging, not only to do the work, but to coordinate and manage the work, and we end up helping a lot with that. Absolutely. But I think we should switch and give Emily a break, and let's go on to the third topic, which is security. And Ashley, I know you're really big into security. You love HTTPS and all things secure. So talk to me about that. Maybe let's start with why is HTTPS important, and why is it important specifically for mobile?
Got it. So this is a long question. Bear with me. And I do get really excited. So HTTPS is important both on web and mobile side, and a lot of them have crossover. So from a very basic issue, we just want to keep people safe. And a lot of different folks can listen in, not just hackers or someone with bad intentions, but when you lack encryption, even your service providers can listen in and see what you're doing when you connect to a non-secure website. So the very first reason why it's important is just to protect users. In SEO specifically, there are a lot of other great benefits. Right now, users are learning more about HTTPS, and they're learning to look for it and to not trust sites that don't have it. So it's a really good way to earn trust and rapport, and it's something that Google sees as so important. They're giving ranking boosts too. So outside of just being a good person and making a great website, users are going to love it. Google's going to give you a big boost. And we know that mobile tends to have even more troubles than web. So even though it's a mobile first world, and we're working on that with the index, I think that mobile still comes secondarily to a lot of different developers and a lot of different business concerns. We know there's a cost and an effort associated with moving over to secure pages, even though there are great resources that make it a lot better, and open invitation to ask for those, and I will tweet those out later as well. But with mobile pages, it's not always as apparent to see what's secure and what's not. And a lot of mobile users, while walking around, are going to attach themselves to non-secure networks. So beyond just the site, the network will be non-secure. I really like what Google Fi is doing as a self-service to prefer and only connect to secure networks. But as far as I can tell, none of the other cell services are doing that.
And so HTTPS, Google likes HTTPS a lot, right?
Yes. They're loving it. They're pushing it. They're giving ranking boosts and including a lot of resources to get there.
Okay, so maybe from what I've heard, it's a small rankings boost. Do you see the rankings boost or the incentive increasing in the future? Do you think it'll happen?
I do. I think that the pattern that Google tends to follow is to test a lot and then roll out, I think I would call it a differentiating boost. So if there were two pages that it offered the exact same thing and one was secure and one wasn't, the one that is secure that would show up, but the one that isn't secure wouldn't drop from the rankings. And if there wasn't a great secure option, the non-secure one would certainly rank. So that's sort of the soft rollout. But as they're pushing more security and as Firefox actively signaling non-secure pages, I think we can expect the ranking mechanism to just increase in intensity.
So you mentioned Firefox, and Firefox right now is still primarily a desktop browser. What about mobile browsers, and what are the steps that the browsers in general are taking to change how webmasters and users see security?
That's good. I think that some of the browsers are still taking a desktop first mentality and then kind of coding the visuals for the mobile browsing experience. Couple updates on how they're treating it. So Firefox 51, which launched in the middle of January, started to go out, and the little lock sign that you see up in the top of the browser on desktop and on mobile has a red slash through it now if you are collecting any credential information on a site. That can be pretty broad. So we know that there are sites out there that have a login, maybe specific to a certain set of pages or functionality or membership, but it might show up as a modal. So it shows up on every single page of the website. Instead of being quiet, Firefox is showing, the red cross through the lock. Google's taking a gentler approach, but more comprehensive. So they're giving treatment to pages that have credit card information, which is not new, but also any credential pages. And they have a multi-phased approach. So they just rolled out Krum 56 last week, and that started a gray verbiage that just says not secure up by the website. So it spells it out in the URL bar, but it's not nearly as jarring. But they've pitched out different phases that they're going to hit. So the next phase is that for all websites, when you're browsing in incognito, whether or not you're collecting credit card or login information will start showing as non-secure if it's non-secure. Because when users use incognito, they have a higher expectation of privacy, regardless of the pages that they're actually on. Next, they'll start showing some red verbiage and iconography for non-secure pages for all users, incognito or not. And then they have us to go for red alerts everywhere on the web where pages aren't secure. So again, whether you're collecting credentials or not, you'll start seeing a bright red not secure on those pages. I don't know the time frame.
So like red everywhere, red just in the address bar. Are we gonna hit that middle page that's like, this isn't secure?
No, so there will be no big security warning because that tends to be active risk, and it won't be full Carrie-esque, red dripping down. Although that would be fun. But we've been hearing for a long time about HTTPS everywhere. Well, relatively long in the web world, dog years. So I think it will follow that HTTPS everywhere is a goal will turn into HTTPS everywhere in terms of browser reporting. And so Firefox and Chrome are being pretty transparent. They're rolling stuff out. I was really excited to see both their updates in the last 2 weeks. No idea what Safari is doing right now or Edge. So they've been a little bit mum and they can be a little bit different. And then you have the whole complexity with different browsers that social networks are creating. So Facebook has its own browser. They haven't, as far as I know, publicly released their plan on addressing these types of pages either. So even though we know, Chrome is a big one, there are a lot of different players and they may take it more aggressively or more passively, but chances are you still have a lot of users coming from those other sources.
So why should businesses care? Like, so what if there's a little red lock in the address bar? Meh.
I think that, it depends, but users, it's muscle memory and it's been out there for a while, and more users, even casual users, are coming to expect that, and they're seeing it as a sign of trust and respect and validity, whether or not it's the truth. But there are comments out there with the political debacle that we found ourselves in, and with fake news especially, one of the things that a lot of sites are looking for, or if even their news site has a lock on it, and not even pay to play or pay to read, but just they see it as another kind of currency of security and legitimacy online. So even if you're not offering login information, users see it that way. If you do have login information, they're going to go further. I think users are being trained to expect two-factor authentication, so that if you do have something where you can log in to post in a blog or anything like that, they're going to expect you to manage that more heavily rather than just a regular standard name, login, CAPTCHA. So they're going to want you to push that further. And then just for a business, keeping an eye on security, even if it's not just HTTPS, but front of mind security is going to be super important, because if you get hacked, if you are not doing a good job of actively managing the back-end security for your site, your rankings will tank. It takes effort and time to clean up a hack. It erodes at your trust. Users are going to be jarred. So outside of just having the little red lock, security is so important now on several different levels that it's worth the investment. And a lot of big companies are coming together. EFF does stuff, Certbot does stuff to make it really easy to get those certificates and activate them on your server.
Okay, so it's kind of like it prevents us from getting hacked, which could cost us a lot of time and money. What about more immediately for users? It sounds like what you're saying is it's an engagement signal. If you're HTTPS, people will stay on your site longer. Will they spend more money?
Yes. I mean, if you're spending money, you shouldn't be spending money where there's a red lock anyway. So even if you do have something where they could buy that doesn't have the red lock, I would think that especially with these more forceful notifications, your e-com model is going to plummet. So if there's money to be spent, or if you monetize people logging in or having membership or engaging with your site like that, I would see this as an active threat risk.
Okay, active problem that needs to be solved. How do we solve it? What's the easiest way to mitigate the red from being all over the address bar on my site?
So ideally, I want all of the sites to be all HTTPS and for there to be rainbows and better weather and a stronger democracy, but that might not happen this year. So what you can do is, let's say if you should always have a secure site where you accept credit card, but just in the instance of credentials, so whether you're logging in to check the site or a membership or a blog or a forum, if you cannot go fully secure, we recommend taking your modal links that would initially include like a pop-up or a JavaScript fold from all the pages and just moving it to a hyperlink to a dedicated page. So that page would still get the treatment, but the whole site wouldn't get the treatment. So it's a short-term fix, but it's something that can help you avoid the stronger messaging site-wide.
What about for e-commerce, like accepting Apple Pay or Android Wallet? Those are HTTPS by default, right? Mm-hmm. So that might be a workaround too?
Yeah, so I think that would be a way to get payment information directly through. And there are going to be other technologies that require secure sites. And so it's another push to jump on. Like AMP wants you to have fully secure sites as well. So I think you have ways of leveraging technology that's out there to circumvent or even make the work easier to get it fully rolled out on your site.
Okay, so now talk to me about like a mobile hacking scam. HTTPS protects users, but draw that story out. What would it look like if I had an app or a website that wasn't secure and users got hacked from the user perspective rather than the company perspective? Would they know?
So I think it's trickier. I don't think that the iconography for mobile users is as apparent as it is on desktop. So we get pretty bold warnings when you go to a site that might be phishing, where the URL changes or there's credential information that's not secure, or for a URL that's hacked. On mobile, the URL is generally much shorter and harder to see. And I see a lot of different scammers creating what looks like a legitimate URL on a terrible domain, but with a long official sounding subdomain, because that's all that will show to the users on mobile too. So I think it's easier to be tricked clicking from email, depending on the browser that you're using. If you're on an iPhone, you're going to default to Safari, and I don't think they've been as apparent or clear with safe sites. So you're going to run the risk of that. And then as far as apps are concerned, I'll ask Emily to chime in here in a minute because she's the pro on this, but they're really pushing security as well, not just on the apps themselves, but if they're pulling in any resources, like if they are pulling in a video or a PDF from a different site, Apple's going to start requiring that they're pulling from legitimate secure pages. It doesn't protect everything though. We know that certain apps use WebKit so that they mimic the browser experience. So like in a Twitter app, I can click over to a news article, and that leaves it open-ended, but there are ways that they're tightening them up beyond just the regular browser world, but for the app world as well. Em, do you want to share anything else on app security?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, app transport security was sort of the big announcement in the app world. Apple basically said starting 2017 now, they're requiring all new submissions to not bypass app transport security, but to actively, use and sort of this this secure method of pulling in external resources. I looked at some interesting workarounds for this. There used to be more. Now, basically, the only way that you can get around this is if when you submit your app, you write in your release notes to Apple, like, hey, we didn't do it here because we couldn't for some reason. And Apple is approving things on essentially a one-by-one basis. But if the reason that you're not pulling in any resources securely is just because you're lazy or don't have development resources, don't expect your app to be approved.
Don't call me lazy.
What happens to apps that were already submitted and they've been in the App Store for a long time? What happens to those guys?
And they continue to work as functioned until they need to resubmit. This is all happening really in the review process. Apple has done some other things to try and clean up old apps from the App Store, which is interesting. And that's an entirely different topic that doesn't have as much to do with security as much to do with how apps are created for newer operating systems and how older apps that use a different kind of format may slow down newer operating systems and things like that. So they're trying to message that to users too, as well as cleaning out the App Store. But it's interesting. I think especially to go back quickly to some of the other interesting security issues is of course that a lot of apps right now are sort of trying to get around being malicious in some cases by having you download, what we think of as like a shell app, and then trying to push you to other resources. And so that's something to be careful of as well. If you're downloading an app to use that app and it's trying to send you to download a different app, as a user, you should be really aware of what that means and that could be potentially dangerous, especially on the Android side where you're not really forced to download apps from the Google Play Store. You can download them from wherever. And I download a lot of test builds that way, but somebody could send you an Android app that has quite a bit of malicious information in it or is trying to sort of hack your phone in some way. And there are tons of horror stories about this. But iOS users shouldn't feel like they're completely safe either. And if there's anything to be learned from sort of how information has been tracked, apps are really great at sort of passively tracking you. And if you're concerned about your privacy in that way, it's really interesting to go look at the terms of service for every app you've downloaded. They usually pull a lot of information from the user, and whether or not they sell that to other people, TBD.
So you say interesting, I say terrifying, terms of service.
Yeah, well,
for us paranoid types, a little terrifying.
So, Alex, I see you rejoining us, and I have a feeling you're about to tell us that we need to wrap it up. But I wanted to point out one more thing and get Ashley to agree on this, is that AMP is another workaround for HTTPS, right?
Yes, so the pages that are going to be served directly from Google Cache are always going to be secure, and there are definitely cases where it makes sense to only serve the AMP page, even on desktop. So it's not specifically limited, it has broader applications.
Okay, fantastic. So Alex, if it's okay with you, I know we have one more topic that we're supposed to talk about, which is the future. So can we go one at a time and like throw something at you about the future and then call it a day?
Real quick.
Be over extra 5 minutes, I would say, just because we try to to stick with our schedule. But otherwise, thank you, ladies. That was just amazing. You are so good in coordinating everything. Really enjoyed it.
All right, so we're gonna go less than 1 minute apiece on what to look out for the future, and I'll start. I think the future for mobile web especially is going to be a lot about progressive web apps, which are a merge of native apps and that live on the web. And we're seeing some of this happen with the taking Android Instant apps out of beta. That's a big deal because it's a progress towards a life where native apps live in the cloud. And Google's also very bullish about Firebase, and that's another platform that allows native apps to live in the cloud rather than on the phone. So you get a lot of the benefits that a website gets, and all the benefits that an app gets without all the downsides of both. So that's where I'm focusing. Ashley, what about you?
So I think that with the heavier push towards structured data, it's been around for a really long time, but the fact that it's maintained and keeps getting active pushes tells me that they want all of the different modules or chunks of information to be quickly machine processable and as accurate as possible. Says a lot. The same push for secure ways to get information out there, whether it's through your phone, progressive web apps, instant apps, native apps, web pages, just tells me that I think things are going to be want to be lighter, like AMP, more nimble so they can be served anywhere and have the data locked down. Google got really good at using browsers to render pages and use some of that information, but I imagine it's expensive and cumbersome. So I think they're going to find new and interesting ways to affordably get the best information to users all over the world.
Awesome.
Emily? Wrap us up.
So gonna echo you guys, but I think sort of like the UI agnostic content model is a really interesting way to look at things going forward. If we think about the way that we're pulling in data and then presenting it to users, making sure that we're going forward, thinking about a way to do that that isn't dependent on a certain kind of UI. We have voice UI now, we have web UI, we have app UI, we have all sorts of different ways to present our information, and knowing that in a lot of cases in the future, we're really going to have our sort of choice of the best technology available to us. The best thing that we can do to prepare is make sure that we're actively creating a great backend that can then spit out our data into whatever UI it needs to be in.
All right. Alex, that's us. We're done.
To stay more with with you ladies, it was really great. I'd love it, enjoyed it a lot. Well, actually guys, there is the only one thing that I just I think just we missed, because what you need to go to mobilemoxie.com, and there you will find an amazing mobile marketing kit that you need. You know why? Because that will be your very first kind of, if you're if you're trying to find the best tools to start building an excellent mobile website, then that's what you need. So I've already tweeted it out, so you can go to just to Twitter as well and find our tweet, or just directly to mobilemoxie.com, and then you will find everything. And what else? It's free. Yes? Awesome. So what can be better? Thank you very much. It was great. Thank you. Well, I think the next time we are going to do that kind of sessions, I think it will be great if you just put your questions just like labels. We were like, you can just go then and take a look how we've tried to adjust it, because we were like putting your picture and then showing a slide, but still ideally it will be great to see just a question that will be nearby downside the video. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. It was great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Take care. Okay guys, we are going to have just 2 minutes break, and then we are going to move to our very last 2 sections. So stay with us, and so just see you very soon. Thank you.